I'm just sitting here reflecting on how times have changed, and Bank of Ireland have to resort to producing water to make food on. I think in this phrase, the state of the church, there are two fundamental misunderstandings in our culture in relation to both the main words, the word state and the word religion. First of all, the state, we have this sense, I think, somehow that the state is some kind of apparatus that is somehow at the head of the people and that dispenses wisdom and administration in their direction, and under some kind of light touch control of democracy. But in fact, the state should be the people. It should be the people speaking to themselves, governing themselves. And in a democracy, that implies the democracy, the majority ethos defining the nature of the state, first of all. Secondly, the word religion is misunderstood because there is this understanding now, which has become the stock understanding of our culture, the straw man that is set up at the centre of the argument, that religion is simply an institutional phenomenon which dispenses rules and regulations and so on towards its people, towards its faithful. But in fact, religion is the ultimate hypothesis of mankind. It is the hypothesis out of which we as human beings perceive ourselves in our totality. It gives us the opportunity to understand ourselves fully, if only in potential. Without this understanding, human culture becomes stunted, becomes reduced. And in the context of a society, without this understanding, we end up with what Pope Benedict, speaking in the Bundestag in 2011, described as the bunker that man has built for himself to live in without windows, in which he shuts out the mystery, he shuts out the wonder of the world. He creates an environment of which he knows all of the dimensions, all of the conditions. He can show everything absolutely, he can demonstrate everything within this space. He becomes master of his own space and his own environment. But he shuts out the mystery. And in shutting out the mystery outside, he also shuts off the mystery of himself, which unfortunately is within the bunker. So each of us is reduced to a third person in this kind of culture, where we become citizens, voters, taxpayers, commuters, consumers, all these categories, but the human element of ourselves is closed off from participation in the society itself. That is not considered a vital element. Now, if you therefore, if we were earlier, I came from the last part of education, and this is vital, it seems to me, in the context of education, because unless education system, which is, instruction and understanding of the totality of reality, unless this is informed, unless this is vivified by a total understanding of reality, or an attempt to have a total understanding of reality, then the human beings who emerge from it cannot actually have a real, total human engagement with reality. And the problem with it is that it has to be specific. Unfortunately, in this culture, we have acquired this idea that you can somehow create a kind of a complan culture, which is kind of mixed about, and loads of different ingredients, and everybody eats the same thing, and everybody gets a certain nourishment. But that doesn't actually happen. There's a terrible specificity about belief, whether it's belief in nothing or belief in something. You actually have to stand in a particular place and make a particular statement about yourself and your relationship with the world. Therefore, it is not possible to fragment that. It is not possible to actually say, I'm a little bit of that, but not really. Please don't, I don't want to offend anybody by saying what I am or what I believe. So, in the end you end up with a public space which is vacated by belief, which is devoid of belief. And we have a strange moment at the moment here in this culture, because we have a kind of a period of transition, an interim period in the kind of destruction of the existing culture. It's almost as if you can imagine people going into a big top, and they go and they look around this wonderful canvas space, the tent, and they say, this is a beautiful space, but that pole in the middle, it's really getting in the way. Give me that chainsaw and I'll get rid of it. What happens next? This is what's actually happening as a result of the secular liberal assault on the structure of our society, which is 1,500 years old, which depends, because they don't know what they're taking down.
they don't know what they're disintegrating, because they're assuming all of the things which they have been given by their lives in this culture for all of their lives, and all the lives of their parents, and all the lives of their grandparents, and all the lives of their great-great-grandparents, and so on and so forth. And by disintegrating this, they are actually cutting off the branch, to mix my metaphor somewhat, that they are sitting on, and that we are all sitting on. And this is the real problem with this argument. You see, that in a certain sense, the kind of atheist secular mentality claims, lays claim to a space which is entirely modern, neutral, and secular. But in fact, they are entirely parasitic on the culture in which they have grown up. And the only way that you can test their hypothesis absolutely is by adjourning this discussion for 2,000 years, returning then to see how things are going with their prescriptions. Thank you very much.
To respond to one of the things that John Waters was saying, I think the distinction, John, is between the population and the state. The people should be pluralist, and there's no need for neutrality within the people. Like, atheism is not a neutral position with regard to civic discourse within people. But in order to protect everybody's rights to have freedom of conscience, the state should be neutral. The state should not take sides in that civic debate. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Well, see, I don't accept the possibility of neutrality. I think that nature abhors a vacuum, and once you remove an essence of one kind, then another enters in. And then it's a question of what is that essence to be. So I think that's the first thing. So the state, can say we intend to be neutral, but more often than not, and you can see this very clearly in the culture that we have, that actually the essence of a lot of these philosophies, whether it's called pluralism or equality, the essence of it is in opposition to what is. So it's anti-Catholic. It is anti-straight white male. That's the nature of the new culture, the new ideology that enters in. So you don't get what you think you're going to get. You don't get what you're told you're going to get. There's another point as well that this whole idea. It seems to me to be odd. We all go around the world to look at different cultures, and what attracts us about different cultures is their particularity, their specificity. We wouldn't go to another place like Ireland, other than maybe once to see how, mad it was. So the whole point of culture, to leave the argument purely in cultural terms, is the richness of the uniqueness of that culture. And it seems to me to be a very strange thing that we want then to purge that uniqueness. That we seem to kind of think that somebody coming from outside is attracted by a blandness, when in fact they are attracted by the otherness of our culture, and the strength of that culture in its own uniqueness, which reflects their sense of their uniqueness.
Just to respond very briefly to that, what you were talking about there was, initially you were talking about majoritarian ethos. You use the phrase majority ethos as being determined what the culture should be. But the difficulty with that is that whereas the discrimination in Ireland is possibly more subtle than in other parts of the world, if you follow that through, then you would accept that in Islamic states, women and gay people should be oppressed, women should be stoned to death, gay people should be hanged, people should be killed for apostasy, killed for blasphemy. So you have to take some set of values other than just the majority ethos in order to be fair to everybody. And we've moved evolutionarily from kings and clerics deciding that to majoritarian democracy to what I think now is human rights-based democracy. And I think we can move on. We used the analogy earlier on. I'll make it very brief. Of the pole in the middle of the circus tent, and I think the difficulty of that, it's interesting you use an analogy of a circus for religious power, but if you can stay in the circus tent if you want, but we can build a parliament elsewhere, that respects everybody's view, and let each people within civic society deal with things as they wish, but the state remaining neutral on theological issues.